James Cook, BBC News.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was Chris Aldridge with the 6 o'clock news. BBC News is going to continue here on Radio 4 with Evan Davis and with me, Michelle Hussein, as we continue to follow the reports about the Queen's health. The Queen, as we know, has been under medical supervision at Balmoral, her home in Scotland. That's what we know from earlier statements from Buckingham Palace, and her children are all now with her. All four of the Queen's children and also Prince William have travelled to Balmoral to be with her, and we know that the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, is on his way. These are the reports that we've been following really throughout the entire course of the afternoon, and there have been many good wishes expressed for the Queen, support for her, prayers for her. People's thoughts, political leaders, religious leaders, many people's thoughts and prayers are with her and her family at this time. We knew of the concern of her doctors. That was made public by the palace earlier today, and that was how all of this developed. Our royal correspondent, Johnny Diamond, is here in the studio with us. Bring us up to date, Johnny.
A curious day, a day of intensity and yet not an enormous amount of information. Instead, just signs and signals, Michelle, of the seriousness of the situation. First, that statement at just after 12:30 today from Buckingham Palace itself, pretty extraordinary, given how jealously the palace guards information about the Queen's health. Then, 40 minutes later, talk in the Commons, a note passed by Nadhim Zahawi to the Prime Minister, and suddenly a change of mood within the House of Commons, and a statement from the Speaker himself to the Commons relatively shortly after that. A brief statement extending best wishes of the House to the Queen and to the royal family. Again, a sign that things were not as they were and that this was a very different kind of day. And then word coming out from various different parts of the palace, different sources in the palace, that members of the royal family, senior members of the royal family, all of them changing their plans so they could move towards Balmoral. Royal Princess Anne, Prince Charles, already in Scotland, quickly getting to Balmoral. Other senior members of the family, Prince Edward, Prince Andrew, and Prince William flying up from RAF Northolt in an RAF plane.
Johnny, thank you. We have just had news within the last few seconds from Buckingham Palace announcing the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She was 96 years old. So far the palace has not given any further details, but this is the news, that we've had news of enormous significance for the entire country, and indeed beyond our borders as well, that the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon.
Well, that is momentous news, anticipated perhaps through the day as we had that concern this morning. I'll just read that statement. The royal family tweeted the statement just 1 minute ago. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. So there we have that news. Johnny, you were just absorbing that. The nation is just absorbing that. Just tell us what happens now, Johnny, as we do understand what's just happened.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Evan, we are in uncharted territory. The thoughts of many will be, of course, confused, but also will turn to immediate members of the Queen's family. And it is noticeable, of course, from the statement, the transition of power has happened immediately. The statement from Buckingham Palace refers to the King and the Queen Consort, who are at Balmoral and will return to London. The focus will gradually shift from Balmoral to London. But right now, of course, we have seen over the day the movement of members of the royal family to Balmoral, and that is where the attention of the royal family and the attention of the nation will turn. The Queen remains there, and the members of the royal family are there, and the thoughts of so many will be with them.
Yeah. And Johnny, let's be clear, Charles is king. from now. That handover occurs on the death of the previous monarch.
That happens immediately. And from this point on, he is the king. And his wife, formerly the Duchess of Cornwall, is the Queen Consort. It's yet to be formally announced how he will describe himself, whether or not he will be known as King Charles III, and we'll get that information later. But yes, he is now the king, and the weight of that is now on his shoulders as the nation contemplates the change.
And flags, we see, are being lowered at Buckingham Palace.
We'll have continuing coverage of this. Of course, we'll have a special programme coming up on BBC News, across BBC News, very shortly as we cover the death of Her Majesty the Queen.
This is BBC News. We're interrupting our schedules for the following announcement. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. A statement from the palace said, "The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow." This is BBC News. Normal programmes have been suspended because of the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. A statement issued by Buckingham Palace a few minutes ago said, "The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow."
Thank you, Chris. You're listening to BBC News, broadcasting on the UK, across all our networks in the UK and around the world, following the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. This is Michelle Hussein with Evan Davis here in the studio. And if you're just joining us, Buckingham Palace has just announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The palace's statement said that the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort, they said, will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. So that's the news that we had just in the last few minutes, after several hours of reporting the public statements earlier in the day about the health of the Queen, that Buckingham Palace had said that her doctors were concerned. And then we knew in the last few hours that members of her family, all four of her children and Prince William, her grandson, the Duke of Cambridge, had all travelled to be with her at Balmoral, and that is where they were before this announcement was made. Well, our royal correspondent, Johnny Diamond, has been covering this throughout. Balmoral is a place that was special to her, Johnny.
It was special to her. It was a place of enormous peace and tranquility to the Queen, a place where she spent all her summers, long summers there, a place of privacy, a place of family, and a remote place as well for a woman who spent her life in the public eye as really no other figure of the 20th and 21st century has done. And with this 26-word statement, this briefest of statements from Buckingham Palace, an era has come to a close.
Indeed, the royal family's official website carries the message Queen Elizabeth II, 1926 to 2022, along with that official statement that we've that we've been giving you.
It's not just a life that has come to a close, Evan. It is an era and also a way of life, because a life of service has come to an end. A life, it should be said, that the Queen was not actually born to. She was not born to succeed to the throne, and she did not choose to either. But at 25 years old, it came to her, and she gave her life to it in a way that is perhaps inconceivable to any except those who lived through the war that forged her sense of service. We'll hear the word service and duty many times in the next few hours and days, but she was the exemplar of service. And with her passing, we will not see that kind of sacrifice, that sense of service again.
People will be absorbing this news, of course, in this country, right across this country, and indeed in many other parts of the world as well. It's a long, long life. She was 96 years old. It's an extraordinary dedication to duty over the course of that entire reign. And even several of her prime ministers were born after the beginning of her reign. So for most people in this country, this will be the only monarch that they've ever known.
Yes, I mean, for most people in this country, and of course, as you mentioned, Michelle, for many people in the countries over which she is their monarch as well, or I should say was their monarch. She was Queen of Australia, of Canada, of New Zealand. They had her too, and it was service to them that she gave as well. And there will be equal sense of shock and mourning and surprise and disappointment at her passing.
Well, just to say, you were listening to BBC News, a special programme on the announcement of the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Let's hear a little bit of her own voice now. She acceded to the throne February 1952. She became, obviously, Britain's longest reigning monarch in September 2015, that was. And in 2022, this year, she marked 70 years on the throne, a symbol of stability and continuity in a world that has changed much, and her life, of course, underpinned by devotion to duty, fulfilling a promise she made on her 21st birthday in 1947.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.